It sounds like he was rather keen on you.
Yes, I suppose he was. He wasn't bad looking, you know. I thought he was a bit of a chic at the time. Started going out, you know. One Christmas he said, the first Christmas he bought me a portable gramophone. And I gave him a pullover I'd knitted, which didn't cost much. And somebody said I was mercenary, which I was most injured at that. Anyway, he said, I'm not asking up my house because I think you should stay in your own home for Christmas. Yes, said I, not wanting to go. But Violet and her husband, as he turned out to be, said, let's go down the White Hart down Kingston Road for a drink. They'd got a ticket or something tied to the house to buy some spirits with me. All creeps down, tells me, Mother, we won't be long. Off we go. Then just as we get back to the top of our road, Rocky said, come down my house for a minute and wish my mother and father Merry Christmas, which is quite nearby. So down we go. There's a full party in swing there. Oh, we did enjoy ourselves. Got all about me mother and father waiting at home, didn't we? Rolled home about 3 o'clock in the morning with no spirits in the bottle, so Rocky crept back and got a drop more because we'd promised this whiskey to my dad. And of course, down come Willie next morning, I'm not up. My mum said she's not up. Oh dear. Well, I shouldn't think so. They weren't in till about 3 or 4 this morning. Oh, mate, that done it. I had a lecture about he didn't ask me there and I went somewhere else. Anyway, we were to go to a party, an engagement party, Boxing Day, you see. Off we, I don't know whose it was, a friend of ours. Off we trips. And when we get there, 'cause I'm being a bit nasty, 'cause I thought, blooming cheeky, ain't my boss, I can do as I like. And there was a rather an attractive sailor there, and he said to me, you with anybody else? I said, no. Right, he said, I'll tag on to you. Oh dear, that done it. On the way home, he's having a go along the street there, you know, nattering away. Gets to a road called South Road, you see. If you don't like it, I said, you know what you can do. Right, I'll do it. Off he went, up this South Road to his home. I never saw him for months.
Who, the sailor?
No, Willie. He found out that I'd told this sailor, because the sailor said, oh, I'm with that girl. He said, I reckon she's a bit of all right. Of course, he said it to him, didn't he? And they nearly had a little wash day, and I got sung out the house. We came out the house having a little argument along the road. And then I didn't see him for about 6 months, and that's when they arranged the rendezvous down the British Legion. So I started going out with him again. Then he suddenly became my boy. And
How do you mean suddenly?
well, me regular, I mean, you know, walking out steady. We were going to get engaged, you see, but he spent the money on clothes for himself. He'd been saving for that, so never did get engaged with me. Love.
When did the penny drop as far as you were concerned?
Oh, I don't know. I thought he was all right. I remember when I had Quincy's, he came down to see me on the Saturday night. The big box of chocolates. Oh, I couldn't eat them. But I thought he was lovely. Oh, that was lovely, how understanding, you know. And then he didn't stay long. And he didn't come. I wanted to see him till the next Saturday, you see, because he'd done night work quite a bit. And I'm getting ready to go out. My cocky sister, Lily, the eldest one, she come in. You think he's lovely, she said. He ain't no good. He took another girl at the fish shop last night because she knew the people that owned this fish shop. He had another girl in there feasting her up after he'd been to see you. Of course, I stuck up for him and had a row with her about it, you see, but it was true after all. So, of course, I wouldn't go out to this party I was supposed to go to that Saturday night. I went out on my own. Of course, that was wrong, wasn't it? But he had taken this other girl up there, you see, because we often used to go in this fish bar for a supper on Saturday night. And she knew me and she knew him, so she knew when he'd got a strange girl in there. Not that it mattered, I got him in the end, didn't I? Hooked the fish in the end.
You hooked him or he hooked you?
Well, whatever you call it, I got him in the end. Mind you, he was quite popular, I suppose, with the girls, but I don't know why he suddenly turned to me, because He told me he'd had another girl and been engaged to her for 2 years. He'd give her up because she was writing to a lonely soldier. Which, I don't know if it was true or not.
Did he have a moustache in those days?
No.
And can you remember when you actually got engaged or decided to get engaged?
Didn't never get engaged, did I?
No, was there a moment when you spoke
We
about
were going to get engaged on this Christmas, and he was saving up the money for the ring, you see, and he said to me, "So, Catty, you want a better one than Lucy's got, don't you?" "Oh, yes," said I. "But Lucy had hers, that was a joke, I never got mine." And he's coming out with a new suit, shoes and trilby, took me up Wimbledon Common. I began to wonder where all this money was coming from. And he was saying, "I'm ever so sorry I've spent your money." I was saying, "Uncle, well, that's all right. You don't need a ring. I'll buy you one as soon as I get the money. I promise you." Down on his knees nearly. Oh, what a joke. I never did get it, did I?
Was there an actual proposal?
No, he just, I can't remember that. I suppose he just, we'll get engaged after Lucy and Jim got engaged, you see, because Lucy gave Jim a proper run around before she settled down with him, because she didn't want him. She wanted another man called Fred Smith, which she didn't get. And she said to me, "You know him," she said, "because he lived near me. Speak to him one morning." I spoke to him and he cut me dead. Oh dear. So of course after that, when she realised she wasn't going to get him, I suppose because Jim had sort of been always a faithful little, you know, when we used to go out, say we'd been to London for the evening or something like that, usually on a Saturday night, they'd always be waiting outside the tube station to take us home, you know. Weren't good enough to spend the evening with, but they were always good enough to take us home. I suppose they didn't intend anybody else to take us home, but he was always sort of in the background. So of course in the end she turned to him, and he used to keep, if Willie was on night work, you see, or perhaps he couldn't get there, perhaps he'd gone to the dogs or something, he always used to keep tags on me as well.
So there was never an actual moment when you
There
said,
wasn't
"Right,
an
we're
actual
getting married"?
No.
It just sort of developed.
Mm.
Were you a handsome pair?
Oh God, I suppose so.
No, seriously.
Well, I suppose so, because we were both tall. No, I suppose we were.
Were
Nothing
you
was
both
too
sought
good.
after?
Eh?
You were both sought after by the opposite.
Oh, he was. I suppose I was, but I was a bit, you know, I used to get a bit tongue-tied. In them days I didn't always know what to talk about or what to do. And that, but it came after a bit. I think I was pretty self-conscious right up until the time I had my first baby, but after that I lost a lot of it. And that, but no, I think he was one of those fellas that would never have been without a girl, I suppose.
Can you tell us about when you got married?
What do you mean when I got married?
Well, what happened?
I just got married, didn't we?
Where? When?
Got married at Croydon Registry Office. Of course, that's all I'm going to say about that.
But when? What date?
I don't know, 7th or the 11th of October, I think, 1930. I know I went on a rotten old-fashioned tram to the registry office. I don't know why it was Croydon, because he lived in Tooting and I lived in Merton. Maybe that was why. And his mother and sister came for witnesses. And we were going along to the shop to have some photographs taken. And a bicycle fell on her ankle. This is McCarthy's ankle. And she had to be taken into a chemist and that. And after that, of course, we nipped in and had a quick little drink and went home.
Where
was
home?
Went home to their house at 67 Kendall. We'd been able to get a flat. Somebody, you know, some old man had dropped down dead and he had a flat. We were able to get that through someone that William knew. And we'd got this self-contained flat which we furnished.
Where?
9 Robertson Road, Collierswood. Never lived far out of this district, have I? Merton, I was born in Collierswood, lived in it. I mean, we only live in Wimbledon now, which is a joy in a minute.
Was it easy to get flats?
Oh no, it wasn't all that easy.
You were very lucky then.
We were lucky to get it, you see. He knew the chap that lived in the flat downstairs. And his wife was dead, and he dropped down dead in a public house at Balham, apparently. And his son was married and had a place, you see, so of course we were able to get to the landlady first, but she put it up. She put the rent up to £1 when it was controlled, and it shouldn't have been more than 12 and threepence. We found out afterwards. And of course £1 was quite a bit out of his wages then, so of course we moved out to somewhere that was 15 shillings, which was 5 shillings cheaper. But it was a fool's move. We should have stayed there, really. Because it had, this flat in Robertson Road had 2 bedrooms, a sitting room, a dining room and a scullery, and an indoor toilet, and a garden. It was self-contained. Oh, we moved to a downstairs part of house at 11 South Gardens, Collier's Wood. It was a new house, but the woman who owned it lived upstairs, and she done office cleaning in London early. Never had to move after 7 o'clock at night. We only stayed there a year.
So how long did you stay at Robinson Road?
Oh, I don't know now. Oh, not all that long, I don't think, because he was in and out of work. You see, he was a record pressman, your father. And which, in them days, was only winter work. In the summer, as soon as the records stopped selling, they got put off, you see. And he done hod carrying on the buildings or anything he could get hold of. Jobs weren't all that easy to get during the summer months. Then as soon as it got to autumn and the records were selling again, he would go back there until he worked at the Columbia, which was then at Earlsfield, but he amalgamated with his master's voice and moved down to Hayes at Middlesex. Now on the 6th of March 1931, I had my first baby, a boy, Raymond William, I called him, much to Mrs. McCartney's annoyance. She thought he should have been called William. But I wasn't having any of that, was I? Oh, he was born in the early hours of the morning. I just woke up in labour and he went and got the nurse, and that was it. And I just had him about 6 o'clock in the morning. And, they made a fuss of me, and I wasn't allowed to sit up for 3 days, and I didn't feel ill, you know. I was dead brown up at that. And then you had 10 days in bed, and then 4 or 5 days sitting about. And then you just got on with things, you see, you just carried on. Went to church, never hear of that these days. On your first outing after you had a baby in them days, you had to go and be churched. And in this programme that you read from, where the priest was there, special little service, about you were unclean until you were in church, you wasn't fit to cook, and oh my God, you ought to see what was in there. And I went again when I had Donald. I never went anymore. I had enough of that. And you never hear of them going now. You never hear anybody saying they've got to go and be churched. They just come out of hospital and get straight away on with what they were doing, don't they?
How did you react when you saw the baby?
Oh, I said it was like a monkey. I really thought it was like a little monkey, little hands like monkeys, beautiful fingers. His fingernails looked all polished as if he'd just had a manicure, but I can't help thinking that he was like a monkey.
And what did Dad say?
Oh, I don't know what he said. I suppose he was pleased. I don't know. I never asked him. He never said anything, you know. It was a boy and that was it. I don't know if he went out and wet the head. I don't think he did, because he was in with me every night.
Was Raymond a good baby?
Oh yeah, he was a good baby. And a big baby, yeah, he was no trouble. He was he was £10 born, supposedly. And he grew when he was 6 months old, he weighed £26.6. But in this flat underneath there was another little boy called Arthur, and he was about 3 months older than Raymond. And of course we used to mix quite a lot, and he played with him, and this little boy, Arthur, could talk. fluently quite early, and of course it wasn't long before Raymond could talk fluently and quite early. I suppose he walked when he was about a year and 3 months old. Got the usual amount of teeth, he had fair curly hair. He grew into quite a good-looking baby, but when he was first born, I still thought he was like a monkey. Oh no, because he was only 2 and 2 months old when I had Donald. He wasn't really old enough to, well, no great deal of character. He wasn't a bad-tempered child. If he had caught hold of anything he shouldn't have, I could go up and take it away and say, oh, nasty, and he'd never protest. Although he was really fond of a little copper kettle I had, so we gave it to him. He bashed it up in the end. It was a foolish thing to do, because I could have gone and got him one in Walls in them days for 6pence. Not copper, of course, but he could have bashed that up instead of this little copper one, couldn't he? If he could get in the coal bucket, he'd eat a bit of coal and you'd hear it all grinding in his teeth. But he wasn't really a naughty baby.
Where did he play?
Well, he played in the house. I was taken out quite a bit. He was a bit too young to play out the garden unattended, wasn't he? So you had to go out so he could get to the street one way before we got to the back garden, you see. So, of course, I used to take him out with this woman downstairs, Arthur's mother. We used to go around the commons for walks and that. Of course, we lived quite near the mother-in-law, and we often used to go around there. Mind you, I think they thought a lot of him, their first grandchild, you know, especially the younger ones. They used to think, oh, Raymond this and Raymond that. And then, of course, when we moved to South Gardens, I had Donald there.
When was that?
On the 12th of May. In 1933.
This was just after Hitler came to power. Do you remember that?
Well, I didn't take a great deal of interest in politics them days. I don't think I had time, really, not with 2 young children. I know I just got up from having Donald when Bill's brother died, and then Bill had a nervous breakdown. He went away for a fortnight or so, and was living on very low money, panel money, 18 shillings a week.
What was panel money?
Well, it was what was on. It was called the panel. It was before the National Health Service came out. In 1948, that started. You just got 18 shillings a week if you was sick, irrespective of how many children you had. Then he belonged to a slate club in a public house, and that paid 10 shillings a week for so many weeks.
What was the slate club?
Well, it was a club they paid into, and they drew out so much at Christmas time, and then if you were sick during the year, for so many weeks, I don't know how many it was, you got this 10 shillings per week, you see, which made it 28 shillings. And then, of course, Mrs. McCartney sent round different articles of food and that. I got on all right at too. Well, it was really, although we never suffered like they did up in Jarrow and all that, well, if they did down our way, I didn't know nothing about it. But I do know that if you lost your job, it was nothing to be out work months and months on end. And all you got was your labour money, which was, I don't know what that was now, but it wasn't a great deal more than the sick, I don't suppose. And it certainly didn't count the number of children you had.
Did you ever think of going out to work yourself?
Well, how could I go out to work with 2 young children? It would have cost me more to have had them minded. I couldn't go out to work. I was tired.
Both your mother and your mother-in-law lived nearby.
Yes, well, you see, they didn't reckon on minding the children for you, really. Only in, I suppose, if there was sickness went on for ages, you probably could have got one of them. I asked my mother to mind Raymond once while I went to a hospital to be examined for nervous trouble, and she kept my young sister home from school and looked down her nose. She didn't reckon that one, so it's nicer anymore. Well, my mother never liked William, because years ago her father was in the leather trade, and there was a William McCartney there, which was his father.
My grandfather?
Yes, your grandfather. And he cheeked him. And he said, if I was a younger man, I'd hit him. And of course that always stuck in her mind. She never gave him a chance, actually. I always remember what my father said about his father. That was enough for me. I mean, it's ridiculous, really, isn't it?
Was this normal, though, for parents not to be of great help to their children in those
Well, I
times?
don't know. Some people were. It's the way you're made. My mother always said, you've made your bed, now lie on it.
Now, what happened when Donald was born? Was that just the same as Raymond, just ordinary?
Oh, yeah,
Took it in your
ordinary.
stride?
Wasn't in labour long, about 3 hours. I suppose I was lucky, really. I believed in getting on with the thing, you know. And the old hanky-panky, I knew she's got to get out before I'd get rid of the pain, so out. As I say, I was lucky, I suppose, according to what some people have.
People always say how painful it is.
Well, it is, but I mean, some people's last much longer because they didn't have all these modern aids in them days, did they? I mean, some people, I expect.
And you had him at home, and
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
did you have a nurse, or you must
Oh, yes, you have to have a proper midwife. Immaterial without a doctor, because if you need a doctor, the midwife has got one she can call immediately.
So what time
But fortunately, I never did need one.
what time of day was it?
About 7:15 at night. 7:15 to 7:30, I suppose. I know Violet was there, and she minded Raymond out on the doorstep. And then she went on home, because she just came up to visit. And when she had her second child, I went and looked after her. Took my two, walked all the way.
What was Donald like as a baby then?
Miserable. Well, you see, when we lived in this house, he was spoilt, you see, because I couldn't make a noise after 7 o'clock. If he whimpered, I used to have to pick him up and carry him around till he went to sleep. Time we moved to 75 Quicks Road, he was thoroughly spoilt at about 6 or 7 months old. He reckoned on being picked up, didn't he? But he was a sort of a whiny child, but till he was about 2. But after that, he got over it and was quite happy. Contented little thing, really, that he was. Of course, they used to have the old rough and tumbles that kids have now, but they didn't fight a lot. They were quite pally, them two. We had another child that lived upstairs, Jean Lamb. She was an only one. She upset them quite a bit, so I used to take them out round the parks and commons as much as I could, which was easier on them, easier on me. Time we came home, tea, washed and to bed. They always went to bed early. They'd always go to sleep all right.
What rooms did you have then?
Oh, there I had just 2 bedrooms and a small dining room effort and a adjoining scullery.
This was downstairs, was it right?
Yeah, downstairs.
And use of the garden?
Oh no, we had half the garden, but we had to share the toilet.
And bathroom?
No, there was no bathroom.
What did you do for bath?
Well, I had washed down, or else I used to do the bottom part in this tin bath I had, do the top part first, and then the bottom part. And when the boys grew older, I used to take them round the public baths. And as they grew a bit older than that, they used to go themselves. You get a nice bath round there for twopence. Took your own soap and flannel. But it was quite a nice bar.
That was in Latimer Road?
Yeah, Latimer Road, Wimbledon.
Did you like being married at this time?
Well, I don't think I liked being married at all, really. I'd done it and that was it, and I just got on with it. There's too many ties, isn't there? I mean, if you haven't got plenty of money, you can't go out much. And that's where the trouble starts. When one's always out spending each little copper he gets, not bothering about the next day, and the other one's in with the children, liking to go out and can't. Raymond started school at Pelham Road, Wimbledon.
I thought he went to Aiden's Road.
He went to Pelham Road, Wimbledon. I took him for 3 days, and then he said, "Oh, Mum, don't take me any more. The boys laugh at you and call you a sissy." So, of course, there was a policeman to cross him the main Merton Road, so I used to let him go on his own.
But that was a long way from Collieswood.
I didn't live in Collieswood then. I was talking about 75 Quicks Road, didn't I?
You just jumped on a bit.
No, well, that's what I was talking about when you asked me just now what rooms we had.
Oh, what did you have at South?
Oh, we're not going back to that, are we?
What did you have there?
Oh, well, I only had 2 rooms there. 1 bedroom and a big dining room and a kitchenette.
So when did you move to Quicksroad?
When Donald was about 6 or 7 months old.
And how did you manage to get it?
Oh, we just happened to see the windows empty, knocked on the door, asked the landlord's address and went up and got it.
And what was the rent there? What was the attraction?
Well, there wasn't any attraction. We wanted to get out of this other place because we weren't satisfied. And the woman didn't know what she really wanted, you see. She'd been married and her husband was killed in a road accident and she got some compensation. She came from Victoria and she bought this house, which she didn't need for herself, so she let the ground floor and 2 rooms upstairs to another couple, childless. And she didn't, one day you'd be speaking to her, oh, she thinks she'd get you out and she'd let all the rooms separately to men lodgers and that, it was unsatisfactory. You were always sort of worrying what she'd decide to do because she went up to court once and tried to get us evicted because she thought she wanted to let it, separate rooms or sharing rooms. So of course we saw this place, went after it and got it, so we weren't there long. And we lived in Quicksroad for 10 years because that's where you were born.
Where did you get your furniture from? What sort of furniture did you have?
Oh, well, we got, when we first got married, we got a bedroom suite on hire purchase. And the things that we didn't have a sitting room furnished. And the things that we had in the dining room, which we bought from various places and added bits to it as we went along.
When I said, how did you like being married, I remember you once said that for the first couple of years it was all right.
It was all right, but I'm thinking back, I don't think I've ever been all that pleased with it. I think I got married too early. I should have waited. I didn't have enough fling. I think that's the trouble with most men these days. If they don't sow their wild oats first, it comes unstuck sooner or later. Oh, well, I was a bit annoyed about you going to have you at all. So, of course, tried 1 or 2 little things to get rid of you. Nothing worked. And anyway, nearly all the while I carried you, Bill was out of work. And the woman next door, I knew her girls before I was married.
Who was
They,
that?
The girls Stockbridges, and they bought me some napkins and knitted me some baby's clothes and that, and because we were living pretty near the mark then with my father being out of work. But about a month before he was born, he got a job at an aircraft factory.
Which one?
I don't know which one it was. It's on the bypass somewhere, I don't exactly know where. And then they decided to move to Bristol, and he could have gone down. He consulted me, should we move to Bristol? But for some reason or other, we decided against it. And then he went back to the leather factory. I don't know how he got back there. He got back to the leather factory. He'd worked there before and had been put off. And then, of course, as you became a bit older, you were quite a good baby.
When was I born then? Tell us about when I was born.
Well, you was born, I think it was a Thursday, about 5:30. On the...
In the afternoon?
What?
Where?
In my bedroom at 75 Quicks Road, weren't you? And I had the district nurses for you, where I'd had a private midwife for the other 2. I was a bit worried about them, but they turned out to be very nice indeed. When were you born, Barry? That's it.
Can you remember the day?
It was a Thursday, I think. Anyway, you were quite a good baby, chubby. And that...
Why was I called Barry?
Well, I don't know, I just suddenly thought of it. I never considered any names beforehand, only Raymond's. And I was going to call Donald Dennis, but somebody else said, oh, I don't like that, so it got changed. And on the way out, you see, before he came home from work, I decided I was going to bury you. And of course, when he came home from work, we found you with oh, good, he said, that's over. So I said, I'm going to call him Barry, and we didn't know about a second name. You see, and he was going out to register you, and I said, well, it won't be fair when he grows up if the others have got two and he's only got one. So he said, well, make up your mind. So as he was going out the door, I suddenly called out Joseph. So that's how it got to Barry Joseph.
There were one or two film stars at the time with Barry in their name?
No, I don't think that had any influence on it. I don't think I allowed any of the film stars or anybody to influence me on the choice of names.
Wasn't Raymond named after Raymond Navarro?
No, he was named... I called him Raymond because some years before I saw a girl who'd had a baby, beautiful little boy with golden curls all over his head. And his name was Raymond, so I suddenly decided I'd have a Raymond with a D on the end. You see, but I just suddenly thought of Barry, and nobody else seemed to have Barry. I tried to choose what the neighbours around hadn't got, you know.
And where did Donald come from?
Well, I don't know. I told you he was going to be Dennis. And Bill's brother that was dying then, he didn't know it, but he was, didn't like, he was dying of leaphonitis. When both your kidneys go, I suppose these days he was gone on a kidney machine. And he didn't like Dennis, he thought it was sissy. So suddenly he said, how about Donald? And he approved of Donald, because I was going to call Donald James, you see, which was this brother's name. And Mrs. McCartney asked me not to, because she said all Jameses in her family had been unlucky. So that's how he got it for a second name, Donald James. And Barry Joseph, which quite pleased the old man McCartney, I think, because his name was William Joseph. I didn't know that then. But it quite pleased him because Joseph was put in, I think. Now and again I pleased him. And then, of course, as you were growing up, the war clouds were gathering, weren't they? And Chamberlain, he appeased Hitler.
Yes, I was born just after the first Munich crisis, when everybody thought there was going to be a war.
Yes, well, then he appeased Hitler, didn't he? I remember him coming back and saying, peace in our time. What a doddering old fool he was. And he looked at it and all.
Did you think there was going to be a war then, when he went?
Well, I don't know whether I really thought. I was just hoping there wasn't. And then, of course, you was nearly a year old when the war broke out. No, you weren't a year old. No, not quite, because the war broke out in September, didn't it?
Yes. Did you know the second time that it was going to be a war before it actually started?
Well, you usually hope there isn't. They were preparing quite a lot. They issued everybody with a gas mask and a little pair of rubber ear plugs everybody got pushed through their door. Gas masks for a baby were a joke. Great big thing, you had to put the child in it.
Put the child in it?
You had to put the child in it. It was sort of like a cot thing, and it was all enclosed over with a pump at the side. You'd got to work to get the air in. And what would you, if they'd used gas, thank heaven they didn't. What, you in a gas mask going somehow like that, and you pumping that, and I mean, it only got happened to you and the poor baby. Oh well, that would have gone, wouldn't it, if you couldn't work the pump. But when they never did collect, when the war finished and that, they never did collect those gas masks what they issued to all the people, but the babies ones you had to give back.
Well, did the babies go in them happily?
Well, I don't know. I don't ever remember putting you in it. But I shouldn't imagine an ordinary, normal child, say a gas attack had to come on in the day, an ordinary kicking baby, I shouldn't think, well, you'd have had to put it in it for its own benefit, wouldn't you? But I couldn't imagine a normal baby kicking about in one of them about 6 to 8 months, because they went up to I know they went up to a year, as you wouldn't have had one. But how much over a year than that, I don't know. And then they had blackout practice, and And they put all the street lights out, and you couldn't get a torch for love nor money. People crept about with a torch.
This was in the time before the war actually started?
This was when they had various little tryouts. Jill, wasn't it? Or was it Chamberlain? Who read it out? It must have been Chamberlain.
Can you remember
We
that
are
day?
at war. Yes, it was a Sunday morning.
What happened?
The wireless on, he said we're at war with Germany because they had we'd have made a pact with Poland that if Hitler attacked them, we would go to war with Germany. Well, he'd overrun various other countries. And he went into Poland, and of course we honoured the agreement, and they said, as from so-and-so, we're at war with Germany.
Do you remember the actual day, though? How
It was
did you know
a
to put the radio on?
Sunday.
How did you know to put the radio on?
Well, you had the radio on normally, and you'd get these. It was a Sunday because they'd made arrangements for all the children to be evacuated, and you put your name down, and before it started, like, children had to all have a certain bag to take their things in. You had to send all their clothes to be inspected at school, two of everything, and that. And on this Sunday morning, they just told you to get them ready. They came round and collected them. But I didn't go, I stayed home with you, but the two boys went. And they'd no sooner said we were at war with Germany than the siren went. Because the Wimbledon children weren't even out of Wimbledon. And they took most of the Wimbledon children down to Hants, Emsworth, Fishbourne, somebody else born, some near Bournemouth. They got people, if they hadn't got a house full, to take so many evacuees. It was all wrong, really. The country people didn't want them no more than the children wanted to go. But what turned me off was, if I'd have gone, I couldn't have been billeted in the same house with the children, so I decided I wouldn't go. And then, of course, there was the writing up and down, and, the kids used to send you letters, and then the people who they were billeted with wanted this, wanted that, the clothes weren't good enough. It was always they want a pair of shoes, you get shoes and send them. They weren't big enough. Then I used to knit them woolies, they weren't big enough. Everything come back, so...
How long were they away?
About 2 years, I suppose.
And when did you see them in that time?
I didn't go down and see him at all, but your father did. He joined the army in the following June. He said he didn't want to wait until he's called up because he had no trade and he'd be in the infantry. And they told him he'd be best in the Pioneer Corps, so he went in that. Then he hadn't been in it long when he was offered, to go on officers training course, which he passed and became an officer. And after so long, towards the end of the war, they only wanted you to see it in the Pioneer Corps. They used to put people that weren't properly fit, perhaps someone with a slight limp or a bit of an eye defect, and all those sort of things went in the Pioneer Corps. And they decided they'd have all fit personnel out of there, so of course he went on another training corps, and they chose the Royal Fusiliers, which he stayed in after the war until he became too old. And
why didn't you want to go and see your two boys?
Well, I did, but I didn't like travelling much in them days. I had a bit of the old agoraphobia. And I didn't go, and they used to write letters up. And then after a bit, because I didn't know all the real truth, he went down and he said it was quite nice people, and Mr. and Mrs. Grant. He was an insurance agent. And then he had heart trouble and they wanted to put them somewhere else. And the Blitz was sort of over in London, so I said no and brought them home. And some of the tales they told me, I wish they'd never have gone.
What tales?
Well, if they wanted to go out, they were shut out till 10 o'clock at night, and and that, you know, they were looked after, but very grudgingly, and now apparently the things that come back were all clean. I reckon they must have looked like tramps all the week and little Lord Fauntleroy's on Sunday, because all the best clothes was kept for Sundays. They were sent to Sunday school. They got prizes from there. They got prizes from the day's school for good progress and, you know, regular attendance and general improvement. Of course, it upset their schooling, because when they come back they were put anywhere, because when the war first broke out the schools in London closed and children never went to school. Then as it dragged on, you see, because it was going to be over by Christmas, as it dragged on they opened the schools again, and of course a lot of the teachers were called up, and if you brought them back they went to the nearest school.
But the schools they had been at were Hayden's Road, wasn't it?
No, yes, I suppose Raymond was at Hayden's Road by then.
And Donald?
I can't remember whether he was at Hayden's Road or whether he was still at Pelham.
He was only 5
Oh, well, he must have been at Pelham then.
or 7.
No, Barry must have. They both went away from Pelham. And when they came back, they had to go to Hayden's Road, because they were older. They were both at Pelham, because that's where their clothes went for inspection to Pelham.
But you said he didn't want to be at Pelham.
Who didn't?
Raymond.
Who said he didn't?
Because they called him a sissy.
No, he didn't want me to take him to school because they called him a sissy. You didn't follow it. Mind what school he went to. Of course, when they come back, they were thrown in any class, like, because they'd missed, you know, according to their age. Then, of course, when the scholarship time came round, they went in for that. I don't know why Raymond failed, but I know Donald failed on his arithmetic. But I went to see the headmaster, and he was giving me all the gen about Donald's English paper was the best one they'd had, you know, and all this, that and the other, and you couldn't expect him to be all that interested in the children. He was past retiring age, and he should have been left, and he was only obliging, you know, all this, that and the other. So, of course, he didn't, but he went to afterwards, whereas Raymond was sent to Pelham Road, to Queen's Road School. Donald was sent to Pelham Road, which was a central school, which was wasn't as high as a scholarship school, but it was better than Queen's Road.
Yeah, I remember what I wanted to say before. I got the impression from what you were saying about your own father and your family and the money and the way you were brought up and so forth. I may be wrong, but I get the impression that when you were married and your husband was out of work and all that sort of thing, it was a bit of a come down. Was it a bit of a come down for you?
Well, of course it was, in one sense it was, because I'd never known one, really. Not even when, before I got married, when my father was out of work for a few years. I'd never really known want, because I was earning money myself then. Whereas apparently the McCartneys had been real poor years before, and, you know, his mother said that she often used to get a cod's head and boil it and dip the bread in the gravy and give them kids for dinner. You know, she wasn't ashamed to admit it, but of course he got on after that and he was all right. Well, of course, after I got married, I'd only been, just after Donald was born, my mother had money left her, so they were well off for the rest of their life, near enough.
Did you actually think about the changed circumstances and feel resentful about it?
Well, I didn't really, you see. I was just quite pleased to think, oh, I was married and that, and I just sort of accepted it. If your husband was out of work, he was out of work.
So you didn't blame him?
No, I didn't blame him. I didn't worry about it all that much, really. You know, it was a bit of a bind when you hadn't got much money coming in. But then, of course, when the war broke out, he joined up. And after that, you see, the soldiers' pay was only about 28 shillings a week, one child. And then you could apply for a war service grant, which brought me money up, which made me quite comfortable. I had enough money to send money down the country for clothes for the boys and live, and quite you know, decently with you and that, you see. And then, of course, when your father became an officer, the money went up again. And the living was much cheaper than it is today, and I got on quite all right. I always had money all through the week. Not, you know, I wouldn't say enough to dash about having posh holidays here and all that, but enough to live on quite comfortably.
Did you mention about the parish relief that you were on once?
Oh, that was when we were down Quicks Road. That was before the war. When your father was working on the buildings, he had an accident on a pedal bike. Of course, there was no money to come, so I thought, well, I'm not going to ask anybody for anything, so up I goes to the parish. Oh dear. Was I made to feel like a bit of dirt? I should have money in the bank and all this, that and the other. And they grudgingly said, we'll come down to you, because they come down, look in your cupboard. What's that, he said. Butter? I said, no, margarine. And he gave me a 15-shilling ticket, which I had made out to the co-op. And when I went up to the co-op, the manager there was very nice. He said, well, they usually have so much for meat, so much for veg, so much for grocery. And then you don't have to spend it all in one day. They, you know, you go up and the assistant gave you back another ticket with the amount you'd spent off. Well, I had this 15 shillings a week for 6 weeks, which was the 6 weeks he was out of work. Well, off sick.
Was that a sort of means test?
Oh, yeah.